Hello, my name is Mark Messingslugger, Director of Financial Aid at Thomas More University, and welcome to MORETalks Minis on Financial Aid. So in one of our other video series, we talked about what the FAFSA is and why it's kind of a one-size-fits-all form, and all the different types of students that are doing the FAFSA and why they're doing the FAFSA. And one of the most common errors or set of errors that we usually see on the FAFSA is because that FAFSA is trying to cater to all of those different groups and types of students. So you have questions like, will you have your first bachelor's degree when you begin this academic year? Well, a student in high school, you kind of have to think about that. Well, okay, I've never been to college before. What does that mean? What degree am I actually going for? Am I going for a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree? I know I eventually want to go on to my master's maybe. What does that mean? And so all of these questions are catered to all different types of students, but what are you right now when you're filling out the FAFSA this year? So remember, you have to fill out the FAFSA each and every year that you're in school, and so it's asking you very specific questions for this upcoming school year. What grade level are you in? Will you have completed your first bachelor's degree? How many people are in your parents' household? Those types of very specific questions for this academic year. And it kind of makes you think, because the FAFSA looks ahead a little bit, slightly, to the next year. And because the FAFSA opens on October 1st every year, in a sense, you're almost looking forward 2 years. So because the FAFSA opens up on October 1st, you're skipping the whole next year and going on into the new year. And so it can be very confusing. The same issue happens on the actual FAFSA website. So there are different times throughout the year where there's actually 2 FAFSA forms open and available for you to fill out on the FAFSA website. So starting October 1st, you're going to have 2 different options that are available on the FAFSA. Because the FAFSA opens up October 1st, that's still within the current academic year. So you think a new academic year usually starts in August, if you think about a traditional academic year. So we go from August until October 1st, that brand new FAFSA for the next August opens up. So we're in a current school year, so the FAFSA is open, but you're actually looking for the next year's FAFSA. And that can be very confusing because from October 1st throughout that next school year, you got 2 options out there. So if you're already in school, it's easy. You just do both FAFSAs at the same time. But for those students who are seniors in high school, you're looking for the most futuristic FAFSA, in other words. You're looking for the one that goes out to the next year. So some very pointed, specific common errors that we have. There's a question, I'll read it word for word for you. Question on the FAFSA is, will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin the school year? What is a bachelor's degree? That's essentially what you're going for when you attend college. A 2-year degree is generally called an associate's degree, and a 4-year degree is typically referred to as a bachelor's degree. So most students who are entering into Thomas More, they are going after their first bachelor's degree. So when the question asks, will you already have your first bachelor's degree, you want to be sure to answer no to that question. If not, you may have automatically eliminated yourself for some financial aid and not know it. We have students, a handful of students every year that inadvertently answer that question incorrectly, and they can't figure out why they haven't been awarded financial aid until we find the issue. Another very common error, the question is, what will your college grade level be when you begin the new school year? So again, that's that issue of you got to think ahead. It's not the current year, you're looking for the future year. So what's your grade level? Again, what degree will you be working on when you begin the new year? So usually students here at Thomas More are working on that bachelor's degree. You're typically not working on a graduate degree right out of high school. That would be impressive, but no, you're working on your bachelor's degree right out of high school. So a couple parental questions for students who have to provide parental support or parental information on the FAFSA. As of today, what is the marital status of your parents? Sometimes this can get a little tricky. We know, with separated households, separated parents, divorce situations, that can get a little tricky sometimes. The key to answering this question correctly on the FAFSA is there are 4 potential people that could be labeled as a parent on the FAFSA. You've got biological mother, biological father. If those 2 people are separated but have both remarried, you have a step parent, a stepfather, and a stepmother as well. 4 potential people on the FAFSA that could be a parent. So that can get very confusing. whose information do you provide? There's not enough spaces to put 4 parents on the FAFSA, so who do you provide? It is the parent who you live with the most. So whichever parent, biological parent, you live with the most throughout the past year, if that parent happens to be remarried, then that step parent also is included in the FAFSA. Those are the 2 parents that you provide. If you're not able to determine based on timing, so if you can't determine which parent you live with the most throughout the last year, if it's exactly 50-50, which parent provided more financial support to you within the last year? That's the parent, and again, if they happen to be remarried, that step parent as well is on the FAFSA. Another common error we get, how many people are in your parent's household? So seems like a very straightforward question. So you might have a parent, 2 parents, and siblings. What happens if there's a grandparent? One of your parents' parents is in your household. Do they count? What if you have a cousin or a niece or a nephew that lives in your house with you? Do they count? And the answer to that question is yes, they count as long as your parents are providing more than 50% of their financial support. So if you have, for example, a grandparent that lives in your house with you, and your parents are providing more than 50% of the financial stability for that grandparent, then yes, they are included in your household as well. Along the same lines, the very next question is how many people in your household will be attending college in the next year? Again, seems like a pretty straightforward answer, but at the surface, but it gets a little bit more complicated. They're looking for enrollment at least half time, so which is usually 6 credit hours. As long as you're enrolled in at least 6 credit hours, you are considered attending college. Unfortunately, parents do not count in this question. So if you've got a parent or even possibly both parents attending college as well, unfortunately they do not count in this number as number in your household attending college. A couple final questions that we get, often errors, is your adjusted gross income. So we're getting into some income and tax lingo. So your adjusted gross income, that AGI, as well as income tax paid. Sometimes we get a FAFSA that comes in and the number that's reported on the adjusted gross income is the exact same number reported for taxes paid. In other words, every dollar that you earned over the past year, you paid off in taxes. And that's usually not the case, hopefully. And so that's a pretty good sign that there's an error there. And in fact, the FAFSA is automatically going to flag that and say, no, we don't think this is right. You need to look at this further. For good reason, right? It probably is an error, and it's probably hurting your causes for financial aid. So that is a common error as well. Along the same lines as that is if a student's AGI is exactly the same as the parent AGI. That's usually a pretty big red flag. Maybe just misread the question, didn't see the student versus the parent, and you ended up entering the same number for both. A good way to avoid that is by using the data retrieval tool on the FAFSA. That tool allows you to tap into the IRS. So you're actually going off to your record in the IRS and importing all of that data into the FAFSA. That way you're guaranteed to be correct. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it or give it a share. If you have other questions, be sure to put a comment and maybe we just might answer that in a future video.